Two. Just kidding, we're live. Welcome. Where's the camera? Welcome to Saints on Cinema. I'm Tim Wilde alongside Josh, as always, and we are here. If you can tell by my hair, what movie we're talking about? Well, I guess I spoiled it with the
We're
background.
talking about some weird movie with elves and
in honor of Olivia Newton-John dying. We're doing a Grease discussion.
I don't even think that qualifies as Grease. I don't even know what that is. What are you doing?
Shut your face. Just because you don't have cool hair. This was a 10-second wet job to I just don't have I could do it if I had the rest of it the right lengths, but it's not cool at all. But we're talking about Elvis, and we have a very special guest that is going to be premiering. This is his debut experience on the show, but not exactly. And I'll explain in just a moment. But we're going to bring on our buddy Eric Wilkins. How are you doing, bud?
Doing good.
Good. Eric. So Eric is actually a former missionary. We weren't partner companions or anything, but whatever. He served in the same mission as we did for our church in Indiana. And one thing I knew, I served around Eric. Josh, did you serve around Eric? You just knew him.
Yeah, I served around Eric a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know, because I barely served around you, and when I did, Eric wasn't there. So,
where were Eric? I think you were up in the north end of the Fort Wayne zone. I know that.
Yeah. I was in Kendallville.
Yeah.
That's when I met you.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, that was at the beginning of your mission, right? That was like your
very beginning. That was my first area. Yep.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Stimulating for our audience, but
yes.
What I remember about Eric was two things. One, when we would have meetings, because he served around us in the small towns in Rochester area, Indiana, by Logansport. He could play the Superman theme on the piano. I thought that was awesome because, as people might know, I like Superman, and he could do the John Williams thing. It was freaking awesome. He would do it in the church, and that not for church, but I mean, when we were messing around in the rooms. Yeah. And then I found out he also loved Elvis as I got to know him a little bit. I was like, dude, you're like super cool. And I was like, but why Elvis? And we're going to get into that a little bit, because I kind of want to focus on your fascination with him and why you're such a big fan. But I remember that, and I remember thinking, like, people our age, the guys our age especially, it didn't seem like Elvis is like kind of a way older pop star. Was he pop, whatever, rock star. And as an icon, it was like old. Like even Michael Jackson was like closer to our era, and even that was old. So I was like, that's kind of a classy choice to love Elvis, but I didn't understand it. So before we get into the movie, we're talking about Elvis 2022 that just came out, which I just saw today. Eric's seen it twice, he said. Josh saw it this last week, so it's relatively fresh on our minds. Before we get into the movie, I just want to ask each of you kind of what were your general thoughts about Elvis? I mean, having nothing to do with this movie, just in your life, because, well, I don't want to go first. Well, that's Josh first. We'll let you go. We'll let Eric go last.
Yeah, me first.
Yeah, you first. What were your thoughts on Elvis?
I've always respected Elvis, and I've liked the music, and I've had a very superficial knowledge of Elvis, but I wouldn't even classify myself as an Elvis fan per se. Like, I like Elvis. If he came on the radio back in the day when we listened to radios, like, I would listen to it and it wouldn't be like a problem, I would I guess what I'm saying is there were times where like things would come on the radio that people like, and I would turn it. I would change the channel. Right. I wouldn't change the channel on Elvis, and I liked it. And if something came on like a documentary about Elvis, I would be interested. But it's not like I've ever owned Elvis stuff. Like I don't even think I've ever owned an Elvis album. So
okay. Yeah. I'm that you're already ahead of me, because I don't think I've ever heard Elvis come on the radio in my entire life. My only exposure to Elvis was late night one time when I was like in high school. Blue Hawaii came on like late at night, and I just like watched it, and I was like, I kind of liked it. Not him. I thought he was kind of a jerk, but that was the character, and I never liked the music. I'm gonna say this right up front. I'm not an Elvis fan. I always thought that, because I was always exposed to like the sequence jumpsuits, the capes and the scarves and the big goofy sunglasses, the goggle looking glasses that now Tony Stark has made kind of cooler. But like, I was always thinking this was it was just obnoxious music. I didn't like the style. I don't like anything. And it's just that the side of country even that I don't like. It's just all that twangy stuff. Never appealed to me. Even in Blue Hawaii, didn't appeal to me except for the song at the beginning where he's like singing in the car home from the airport. Love that song where he's talking about how he was not loyal to his girlfriend. Anyway, I never cared. And then I saw footage in like the last, I don't know, 10 years of more of him like when he was younger, before he had the bigger sideburns and the jumpsuits and stuff. And I was like, okay, he's kind of cool. And his older music, what I thought was kind of cooler, the Jailhouse Rock kind of stuff and Hound Dog, but I never cared, never was appealing. I thought he was intriguing as an icon of music. Of course, he's a legend, but never my taste. And I will say, we'll talk about the music in this movie, but like, I would never buy this album. But that doesn't mean I didn't appreciate or like the music in the movie. We'll get into that. But Eric, you're the highlight here because, again, all I could put together is that you like really cool guys with black hair like Superman and Elvis.
That's right.
Not me. Because this is not working, but whatever. So tell us, seriously, it's so unusual that you, someone our age would be such a fan that you have it on your Facebook profile or have before. So like, what is it? Tell us a little bit about your history of getting excited about it. What got you in, and what do you love?
Well, I've been an Elvis fan since I was a little kid. My parents were not Elvis fans, just so you know, either. So I didn't get it from them. I was born this way, just so you know. My earliest memory, I have two memories of how I found Elvis. Okay. So my parents bought this Reader's Digest #1 hits from like 1956 to like 1975 album. Okay. And there were a number of cassette tapes. This was in the 80s. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, and I remember there were a number of Elvis songs on there, and I just liked them. I would fast forward through the tapes just to find the Elvis songs. What kind
of era of his music? Is this like
you're talking about like Heartbreak Hotel, 50s music, right? Heartbreak Hotel, Don't Be Cruel, that kind of stuff. Okay.
Are you getting this, Josh? You're the music guy in the group, not me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. I don't know any of those. Go ahead.
Man, I got some homework for you when this thing is done. We're going to turn you into an Elvis fan is what we're going to do. So
if this movie didn't do it, I don't think your homework's going to do it, but go ahead.
Sorry, if it's not in Moulin Rouge, then he's just not interested. So.
I have something to say about Moulin Rouge with this movie, but go ahead.
Oh boy, here we
go. So anyway, there was that. And then I assume it was right around January 8th one year. And I say that because January 8th is Elvis's birthday. And they used to play Elvis movies on TV, like all day long on Elvis's birthday, right? And I didn't know who he was, but I remember it was wintertime. My mom was outside shoveling the driveway because it had snowed. So that's why I think it was January. I found these movies on TV and I was fascinated. I was never one of these kids that thought girls had cooties or anything like that, right? I always loved girls, and I saw this guy singing songs, these girls just flocking around him. I was like, this guy is cool. And I remember asking my mom when she came in, I was like, who is this? And she said, that's Elvis. And I was like, well, that's who I want to be. And that's how it started. And so from there, I mean, it's just been the rest of my life. Been a big fan.
So how big of it? Like, I know you just went to Graceland for was it your birthday? It was just this last year. You posted about it. Is this the first time you ever went?
No, I was actually there when I was 17. But first time that I went as an adult, where I was like, responsible for my. Well, and I also could control my schedule, right? I gave it the appropriate level of attention that it needed. So
what was that like for you? Like, really? I mean, seeing it as with a lot more maturity and comprehension of what's awesome about him and more of the history that you've probably learned since you were 17, like as a big fan that your wife took you, if I remember right, what was that like? Was that like, someone going to Disneyland for the first time?
It probably was. If you look at the pictures on my Facebook account that I posted, my wife said I had this goofy smile on my face for like 3 days. That's hilarious. Yeah, and my wife was a trooper. I mean, she is not. She doesn't hate Elvis. She appreciates Elvis. I think she likes it because I like it, and we've been married for 18 years. So
not 3
she's used
days
to it.
of Graceland. Big of a fan though.
Yeah, she was a trooper. And
Awesome.
so we what was fascinating was just walking through the doors of the house. Like, you see, if you're a fan, you see lots of pictures of Elvis. You see him sitting on the couch. You see him in his music room. You know that Graceland was like where he went. It was like his fortress of solitude, if you will. It's how I've always thought about it. Okay?
Don't taint.
Yes.
I'm
kidding. You should go and check it out. You'll
I get
it.
Yeah.
And you can you see that, and you can just there's just a cool feeling there, like how a rock star lived, not in today's age, but starting in the 50s. It was just crazy, the life they had there, and it's just really fun to be there, and to go to Sun Studios in Memphis as well, where he recorded his first records. I had never been there before, and that was awesome.
That was in the movie, right? That was
in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So just curious, Eric, real quick, like, what do you do at Graceland for 3 days? I mean, like, because I just don't. Maybe I don't understand. Is it just his estate? It's just his house, right?
So they have his house, and across the street from his house, they have pretty much like a whole museum of different portions of his life. So you can walk through there. You can see about his life in the Army. You can see just different things that he owned. Like, there's like a famous story about him shooting a TV, right? That TV, they have it there. You can see the bullet hole in it. Just things like that. All his different jumpsuits, because he had some awesome jumpsuits in the 70s that he's pretty famous for wearing. And you can see those. Just things like that. You can go around and see it. And we spent that portion of our trip was really just one full day, right? I probably could have spread that into 2 days, just because it's interesting to me. But
did you get there's like a VIP, a very expensive tour? Did you get the full deal?
Yeah, so I did sign up for the VIP tour, which you have you have a tour guide in a small group, instead of just giving like headphones and an iPad and walking through.
Yeah.
You have a person who's actually walking you through. You get to see a few more things. They take you to the archives, and you can actually see without being behind glass. They have some different artifacts. They had one, like a TCB ring, which was, I really wanted to pick it up to see how heavy it was. The thing was huge. And they even let you put on some white gloves and touch one of his guitars, which was kind of fun.
Was it like one specific guitar that everyone's touched?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm sure it's one
on the wall.
Yeah. I'm sure it's just one he had, and he probably only touched it like one time, but still, to say you've touched Elvis's guitar, it's kind of fun.
That's
right?
cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
it'd be like me touching an Action Comics #1. That would be my dream, but it'll never happen. Not just because of exposure. No one would let me, and that would be stupid to do anyway. But that has nothing to do with anything we're talking about. I'm sorry. I'm looking away because I'm trying to find some. There's some maps and pictures to see how big Graceland is. It's a pretty big deal. And I follow a lot of Kevin Smith work, the director and writer. And he this last year took his mother to Graceland, and he spent on his podcast. He spent a couple of shows just diverting, talking about it. And so that's why I knew about the VIP tour and all that stuff. And it's crazy how passionate people are about Elvis even today. Like it's nuts. People like you, not people like me. Fortress of Solitude is a good description, because as they kind of pinpoint here, like that's how he would go home. That was his retreat. And I think that was apparently very necessary from things I learned in the movie. But that's really cool.
He had other houses, right? In different places in the country where he was, but Graceland was always home.
Yeah. And you look at a lot of stars, that's kind of the way it is, or that's kind of a similar thing when they have all these options of places they can travel, the exciting life and the big fancy homes and mansions all over islands or whatever. But there's usually where they want to go back home. And that's the thing. I didn't know Graceland. My other exposure to Elvis was from Full House, Uncle Jesse, fascinating. You know, he was my hero, especially with cool black hair. And so Uncle Jesse always talking about Graceland and everything, and the guitar shaped swimming pool and all that stuff, like whatever. But anyway, I understood that was his retreat, and so it was really special. But that's really cool. So you are, I don't know, do you like all you love you like you have like collectibles and all kinds of stuff? Are you that?
I do have some. I mean, I'm not, probably if we're not married and had kids, I'd spend a lot more money on that stuff, right? But something about kids wanting food and shelter and clothes, I
a damper on your book, huh? on your pocketbook.
That's what credit cards are for, right? That's what that student loan money was for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do have a few things, that I like to grab, but yeah.
What's your favorite Elvis song, real quick?
My favorite Elvis song is actually "Just Pretend," and
Just Pretend.
Yeah, from the '70s. I'm sure neither one of you have heard it.
Do you know, Josh?
Nope.
But yeah, that's my favorite.
I'm gonna make a note. What's your favorite Elvis movie? Have you seen them all? I heard there's like 100 of them.
31 of them. I've seen all of them at some point, but there are some that are pretty hard to watch. They're pretty corny.
They touched on that in the movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to watch an Elvis movie unless he's singing. I remember that was a pretty.
Yeah.
That was something in the movie that I found very interesting, was that he actually wanted to be a serious actor, but nobody would let him do it. They're like, nobody wants to see your movies, or maybe that was just the guy who was running things, but it was like, nobody wants to see a movie of yours unless you're singing.
Yeah, and that was an unfortunate thing.
Yeah. So real quick, which is your favorite Elvis movie?
Girl Happy.
Okay. I'm going to make a homework assignment for myself to listen to that song and watch that movie and let you know. So, but we'll get through. We're going to start getting into the movie right now. But like real quick, you having seen all 31 of his movies, was he a good actor? Because I don't remember being like he was like, his hero in the movie, at least that depicted his dream, was being as good as like Jimmy Dean. Or James Dean, Jim. Yeah.
James,
and I was like, well,
Jimmy Dean is a sausage guy, so close.
He calls him Jimmy in the movie, I'm pretty sure,
because I was like, wait, Jimmy Dean. But he said James the first time, then he comes back to Jimmy. But that was like his hero. But that's a pretty high bar. But was he a decent actor, or was it just like hokey, just Elvis putting him on there just to get to a narrative around him singing songs?
So, and this is just opinion of Eric, right?
Of course. We're not nominating anything.
I think that he could have been better. A lot of those movies that he made, I think he was just checking a box. He had a contract to get them done, and they got them done, and they're kind of cheesy. There are some that are entertaining, like Girl Happy. Like, I love that movie, but it is strictly for entertainment. You're not going to walk away thinking I'm a better person. Like, that's not what this is. So,
no
but
real substance.
Yeah, if you watch some of his earlier movies, like King Creole from the 50s, there was a lot of potential there, I think, for him to be a serious actor if he would have been given the chance, but that just wasn't what happened.
So the ones where he sang songs, did he always kind of sing and recycle his songs, or were there always like new songs in the different movies?
New songs for the most part.
Really? So that's a lot of music. All right, well, let's get into this movie. I want to ask you, Eric, when you first saw the trailer, I was like, oh, that looks actually really good, and I'd be curious to learn about him in this documentary, or not documentary, but a what do you call it, biopic. But what was your first impression when you saw the trailer for this?
It actually exceeded expectations for me the first time I saw the trailer, because I was really worried that was gonna be some cheesy guy trying to do some weird Elvis voice. But I thought the guy did really good. I wanted to be better. I've seen some Elvis tribute artists, right?
Of course you have.
and some of them are painful to listen to, right? And so that's what I was worried about. But the guy did pretty good.
I Austin Butler's his name. I'm pulling it up.
Austin. He did
Like,
really good.
Out of nowhere, this kid as I watched a little bit of footage after I got home, just before we started recording, I was like, he like completely embodied who he was, his facial, his tics, his voice. Oh my gosh. I don't like Elvis's music, but I love listening to him talk. I mean, I always have. That's why I could get through the Blue Hawaii movie. But he just became Elvis. I think that was a magical transformation, just incredible.
Yeah,
great. Yeah, it was, and there's a lot of great things to talk about the movie we'll get to. Josh, did you when you saw the trailer, were you like excited about this, or is like, yeah, so I'm sure we'll have to cover it for the show?
No, I was intrigued. Yeah. And also, but I don't know how much of that was just by there. I feel like lately, music biopics have been pretty good,
Very good.
like Bohemian Rhapsody was just so good. And, so
Oscar nominee, right?
yeah, I thought that was really great. So I get, Elvis, that should be fun to watch. And I knew I wanted to see it in the theater personally.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was actually kind of bummed because by the time I got around to it, just because life has been busy, by the time I got around to it, it wasn't in like an XD theater. So I was kind of bummed because I thought this would have been a good one to hear with the sound of an XD or an IMAX.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was, I didn't really know what to expect. I was surprised that it seemed like they focused a lot more on his promoter than him, or at least 50-50, which does make sense because he was such a big part in making the decisions.
Right.
I just wasn't expecting it, I suppose.
Right.
I knew Tom Hanks was going to be playing the part, and I knew he'd have a large role, but it felt like most of the time they were talking about, I mean, it was told through his eyes, right?
Yeah.
So,
and it was his side of the story, but he didn't like make himself a scapegoat at the end of it, and he didn't like excuse himself at the end of it. I thought that was fascinating, and I didn't really understand what was going on because I didn't even know who this guy was. And I'm going to be honest, it wasn't until I saw the end credits start to roll, it said Tom Hanks. I'm like, who the hell is Tom Hanks in this movie? I didn't realize it was him.
He did a really good job.
Like, it was like Colin Farrell in playing the Penguin in the Batman movie. It was like, who is that? That's like a complete transformation. But this kid does not look like Elvis. That is an amazing job. He really doesn't. Look at that. It's nuts. Anyway, I was kind of on the same lines with you, Josh. It looked fascinating. I didn't know who Tom Hanks was. I didn't know he was in it. I didn't know who this guy was. But as the story was being told, I liked that it wasn't just like, oh, let's just start at his childhood and like, and telling the story. That the actual plot of the story kind of didn't get introduced until like 2/3 through it. We didn't really understand who this guy was. We didn't understand like about the manipulation. We saw the trail, but we didn't really see like how serious this really was, that he was controlling and dominating and manipulating his career. That was what it really was about. And there was a subtext going throughout the entire theme about that he was talking to us. I didn't pick that up. Whenever he kept dropping little lines like, like his wife, like she could never compete with the love or your love or whatever. I was like, who's he talking to? Is this a letter or something? Like, because they didn't really make it clear, but it was the audience. He was talking to the audience of Elvis, led by Eric, and telling his story. But that's what it was. And Elvis was like a secondary character. Does that make sense? It was like, in the narrative, it was brilliant. I think it's a really great way to do it.
So Eric, real quick, Eric, something about the story that I didn't know. And perhaps you could shed some more light on this, because I was actually really interested in learning more about this. So I always knew that Elvis was controversial because of the sex appeal. Like I understood that because of the wiggling of the hips and the women passing out and stuff like that, that like the older generation wasn't a big fan. I did not realize that because his music was so deeply rooted in African American culture, that there was a racial component to it.
Yeah.
And then was that so sometimes in these biopics, like they take kind of like a bunch of different events that have happened and kind of jam it into one event that didn't actually happen, but they take a bunch of stories from, you know, a bunch of different events. But that scene where he goes down to the stadium and they want him to be the new Elvis, but he goes out there and does his self and then kind of basically causes a riot and gets arrested. Yeah. Is that a legit thing? Did that really happen?
Yeah, I mean, he got a lot of pressure to be something he wasn't at that time, and that really the scene there that I loved was him singing to the dog. If you remember that, they put him on stage singing to a hound dog, and he was supposed to be calm singing that, and he found that very embarrassing, and he didn't want to be that guy, right? So the way that was portrayed in the movie, to be honest with you, I also had a similar question. I had never seen it quite portrayed like that. That was like this decision point in his life where he got up on stage. Now, some of the visuals of that concert, you can see pictures of events like that. To be honest with you, I'll disappoint you and say I don't really know if it was really that dramatic where he said, I'm not going to be that guy. But it was definitely a struggle in his career about trying to be true to himself and also, you know, continuing to do music without being shut down, right?
That was the big event that was kind of like where he threw his hands up and said, no, I'm not going to adopt this new Elvis. But that was kind of thematic throughout it. And that was a subtext going on in the dialogue and in the events that they kept. All that pressure I'm talking about was evident the entire time. It wasn't just that same, but I was curious about that too. And the racial component, like you said, Josh, I didn't know that. I didn't really understand that. I did want to kind of walk through a little bit about his history with what the movie presented. Starting with that part, his childhood. Well, I gotta say the intro was very Moulin Rouge. That's all I was gonna say. Like how it started jumping around, like in the guy, it was kind of like Christian and Moulin Rouge describing what the Moulin Rouge was and the dancers and all that stuff and who she was and everything, like, and it jumped very choppy, cool animated cuts into the scene, and it showed Elvis and dressing up as in one of his final concerts in the full-on jumpsuits and the cape and everything. Hated that. I mean, it was really well done, but I was like, oh, I just can't stand this image. But it was really cool how they led in, but they were so careful to show him. He was there from the beginning, but they didn't show him. There wasn't a reveal, a good clean shot of his face until that first concert. But even before that, they jumped to his childhood, and that's what you were talking about, Josh, was all this, his heritage or his roots with these black kids and everything. And I thought that was really interesting. And how that, I don't know, would that be a Baptist? I was thinking Pentecostal, but Pentecostal wouldn't have been so many black, but like that black church that he was just like chiming into, that really honed that energy and that possessiveness that he felt, that energy that they adopted. Would that be like a Baptist? You would probably know better than me, Josh. I don't know.
I mean, I think it could be any of them, but
doesn't matter. But
yeah, but it definitely was a Bible Belt style revival style church.
Yeah,
probably like apostolic, Pentecostal, or Baptist.
But he is sucked in, and that connected with them, and that's where the shaking and everything, and then that transition that image bounced back into later concerts as they cut in, showing him connecting to what he felt as a child and who he was. I love the Shazam thing. He was Captain Marvel. Sorry, not Shazam. All the Captain Marvel stuff bounced around with copyrights for years, but back then it was Captain Marvel. I thought that was really cool. He was a little comic book kid, and there was a cool line where they said, all kids have a superpower. His was music. I thought that was really cool because that's really what the strength that he received, the guidance he had. And every time there was something heavy going on, it would just, normal movies, you'd have like a song or a score going on to like set the tone. In this movie, every time something was heavy, it would just transition to him just fiddling around on the piano or fiddling on guitar, singing very quietly, and it would just slowly pan across everyone and their emotions over to him quietly by himself. And that really that moved the tone throughout the movie. And I thought that was really well done, that he was the score, he was the soundtrack, and not just the concerts that like they did a really good job of like blending that into the scenes. And so that was his superpower. That was what he went to for peace and everything, and to drive and to contemplate the decisions he was trying to make. I thought that was really cool. But then he connects, and then he goes to his first concert where he's in the purple suit, and I'm like, this is cool. Because because they're like, they don't know who he is, and they're not showing him. He's connecting the whole thing with his twin. I forgot about that he had a twin brother. Is he buried out there in Graceland, Eric?
He's not at Graceland. My guess is he's down in Tupelo where he was born.
That makes sense. They probably wouldn't move the body, but yeah, if he was already buried.
So,
yeah.
So I got a little fun story for you. This is interesting. So at least it's interesting to me. I don't care if it's interesting to you. But I actually, when I was in 7th grade, my dad won a trip to go see a wrestling match in Tupelo, Mississippi, and we were staying in Memphis, and we didn't get to go to Graceland, which was annoying to me. But we did on the way. We were on like some tour bus, stopped at the house that Elvis was born in. Did you see that, Eric? Did you ever get over to Tupelo?
I've never been to Tupelo.
Oh,
no.
Well, I mean, that's really the only thing to see.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not a big place. When we were in Tupelo, like we were there, it was actually really, it was a culture shock for me as someone who'd never left California at that point. Like to go to Tupelo, Mississippi and be sitting in like a wrestling match and like having, I mean, those were like real wrestling fans, like down south, wearing overalls with no shirt, like that type of, they were like salt of the earth folk. They were the coolest people, but I mean, it was way different. But yeah, I saw that it's a tiny, tiny house. Like, I mean, really small.
Yeah.
I mean, the size of probably a 1-bedroom apartment in most places. Wow. You know, it was not really big. So yeah, I think he's probably somewhere around there, I would assume.
Probably.
Yeah.
I guess. I just want to acknowledge, I do realize that my hair looks more like Elvis at the end of the concert when he's like dripping with sweat. It's just destroyed his whole image. But yeah, that first. Oh, go ahead.
Real quick, Eric, was there anything about the movie that you had a problem with as an Elvis fan?
Well, I think a lot of the movie. Well, for one, it was very fast paced for me, right? And some people I've talked to said they got bored during it. For me, who know more about his life, I thought it's really skimmed over some stuff that they could have played more about. They also like the latter part of his life, and I thought this was interesting too. I mean, Priscilla was definitely, I think, involved in some of the storytelling here. That's his wife, his ex-wife. Really, once they split up, if you notice, the movie kind of ended, right? There wasn't a lot of story, but there were things that happened after they split up. There were a couple other girlfriends during that time. I mean, it was a lot of just the same kind of stuff, but I think there was some stuff just not really focused on as much. So, but
one thing that when he went to war, was drafted, that's one thing I remember hearing, that he like donated all the income from the military, like because he didn't need it, and that was kind of like a big deal, and they just kind of jumped right past his service. And it was just like he got a haircut and then he got back and his mom died, and I was like,
and he met Priscilla, right? That was in there too. So
yeah. That was, but it was like, but I felt the same thing, and I don't know that much about his life. I felt like, and I didn't get bored, because I agree with you, it was super fast paced, but it didn't feel rushed to me, and it didn't feel like it was dragging. I thought the pacing was really good, but reflecting back on what they presented, there were things that were missed that I think were kind of important.
I thought the 2 hour and 40-minute movie, it was a lot,
right? But that can be tightened up with certain editing and shortening other things and extending others.
I didn't get bored, but I did towards the end. I was like, is this movie gonna end? Like, it was just, it wasn't. Like I said, I wasn't bored. I was totally entertained the entire time. And the other thing I thought, I kind of agree with Eric a little bit, though I think the way I'd put it was, I was surprised at the stuff they focused on and the stuff that they didn't focus on in the movie. It seemed like there was some stuff that like I almost felt like they didn't spend enough time on his drug use and like his gaining of weight and like these things that really became like the things that killed him. I mean, they made it sound like the reason he died was just because he was overworked, and that may be true, but it was
I
almost
didn't get that impression. I didn't feel like that was the definitive.
well. I think that there was a theme of like this colonel was just working him to death to try to beat his debts, but at the same time, you know, I mean, like I understand that Elvis was doing painkillers and things to kind of keep the engine running, but I'm pretty sure he was doing a lot of recreational stuff that, like, you know what I mean? It wasn't just, oh, I'm just trying to make sure that my back doesn't hurt. Like he's probably getting high like a lot.
Well, Priscilla, his wife, said that all the drugs he did were prescribed.
She said afterwards, like
yeah. So if you watch some interviews with her.
Well, I was going to say after the first concert, when his career starts taking off, that's when the corruption sets in. And that's the whole thing where he stops calling his mom, and she starts to worry about him, and she's worried about him changing, and starts introducing sex, girls on the door, and then his friend pops him the whatever he took. He started on the drugs, and in that sequence, I don't know if you noticed, there was a kid in the back seat that was the Tim character, because there was a kid like watching him in the front seat, and then he like starts trying to do his hair to look like Elvis because he was so in love with it. But I think they introduced that stuff early on, and it did bomb into the story enough throughout it that it wasn't just a throwaway line at the end where he said some people thought that it was the drugs that killed him.
They did make him look like a machine, though, right? Did they? Yeah. Like when he passes out near the end, and Colonel Parker just says the only thing that matters is that boy gets on stage.
And he said that a few times. That was the whole thing with his whole agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, and you even watch like some of his circle of friends. He talks about the conflict of supporting all of them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just showed that he was pretty much this guy who was keeping everyone else going at his own expense.
Right. Well, I want to talk about that too. After the scene, after the corruption starts setting, he starts establishing himself, starts making money. Then he gets the contracts with the colonel, and he talks about merchandising. And then everyone starts this big movement of boycotting Elvis, essentially. And they start telling him you can't do your wiggle, and they compare him to a black man, which I thought was really interesting. That's that shaking is something that they do, and they want him to wear a suit. That's when he gets into a fight with his mom. And I love that she said he's defending the colonel. He's saying, I got you all of this. And she said, I don't want it. Or he says, because you're not happy. And he says, he's yelling at her. He says, I am happy. And clearly is not. That's when he takes off and goes back to the ghetto. It reminded me of Rocky 3. He goes back to the roots, it goes back to, and he meets up with B.B. King, and they have their conversation.
And they're watching Little Richard play.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool. And he was like intrigued. He was like, this guy's got it. He was awesome. I love how they dropped in all these other musicians. It was really cool. But in the conversation with B.B. King, he says they're going to throw me in jail. He says they're not going to put you in jail. They'll throw me in jail for crossing the street, but you're a rich white kid. He said too many people are making too much money off of you to put you in jail. And that's what you were talking about, Eric. And he says there's some other reason that they're holding you back, or something like that. And that was I was like, that's interesting. But like,
the reason is they think they'll make more money if they hold him back.
Yeah.
Because the threat was he wasn't going to be able to get on TV with all of his wiggling. That,
twerking and everything.
He wasn't going to be able to get on Ed Sullivan or whatever show he was trying to get on.
Right. And but that's what I'm saying is what I liked about how what that was all about. We didn't really get introduced to until the last act of the movie, that it was about the gambling debts and everything. The real agenda came back because they showed that they cut back to that line and some other lines when they revealed what was really going on with his career. And you can see him just being his manager and going into the merchandising and stuff. Like that's standard with any if someone's just trying to get rich off of a star. So
I don't think that was standard back then. I think that was revolutionary back then, right?
I think it was. Yeah. Which is why at first I don't know the colonel was a villain in that story, right? I think there was a point in time where that was helpful to his career, made him more of who he was, made him popular.
So you don't think his gambling debts existed back when he was in the circus ring? He was.
I didn't get
like,
that either.
Later?
And even if they did, I think that his ideas to make money, whether he was trying to get him to pay debts or not, they weren't bad. They were making money.
No, of course.
They were making Elvis popular, right?
And it was true. He was keeping a lot of people successful. Elvis, and that was. And that
I think that was what I got out of it until the very end. It was just that the Colonel had a very different view of, like, the Colonel was a carny businessman, and Elvis was an artist, and the businessman. I hate to make a wrestling reference, but it's very similar. It's very similar to wrestling because it comes from the circus, just like this Colonel does, right? So the promoters and the people who are making the money, they don't care about the art. You know what I mean? They're there about the money. They're like, I've heard guys like Vince McMahon, and I agree with this, who will say the best wrestler is the one who sells the most tickets. Well, pro wrestlers don't believe that. You know what I mean? Pro wrestlers believe if they can do these things and tell these great stories, like, they're the best wrestlers. If you talk to the casual fan, they'll say Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, these guys who can't wrestle at all. But if you're a wrestling fan, if you said something like that, you get thrown out of the circle. You know, they talk about guys like Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, who nobody knows other than wrestling fans, who are the best pro wrestlers, right? And so I guess you and I
have talked about how awful Hulk Hogan is, but he was like the money maker.
Yeah, he was terrible. He was terrible for sake of being a pro wrestler.
Yeah,
he never did pro wrestling. He was a showman. And he was great at it. And the thing is, I think that's what it is, right? The Colonel was like, how do we make more money? And Elvis was like, I'm an artist and I'm going to stay true to my art. And I think that is the perfect, for a long time, that was the perfect dichotomy, right? Because there was that tension, right? So there were ideas that the Colonel had that were genius ideas. Like, for example, putting together that thing that said, I hate Elvis. And he's like, they're going to hate you whether you make money on him or not. And he's like, yeah, let's go for it, right?
And then he puts it on. He wears the pin.
Yeah, and that's a genius move. But then it's when the Colonel is telling him, okay, no more hip wiggling. You can't do this. You got to wear this red Christmas sweater and sing with Santa Claus. That's when Elvis pulls back, right? And says, no, that's not who I am. And so that's what, I think it's right. I think that they together were super successful until it got to the point where it was just clearly the Colonel was taking advantage of him.
But when he tried to get him back, the line that completely describes what you just said was where he said in the conversation where he says, you're keeping all these people making money and successful. They're all living off of you, including me. But the difference between me and the rest of them is that I'm also keeping you alive. That they were making each other successful. So that relationship was critical. Elvis couldn't just go off and do it all by himself. And obviously he couldn't go market someone that wasn't there. So it took both of them. It's just until they got out of hand. But you have the artist and then the business side of it, and it's dangerous with the more successful, it gets a lot trickier. And then it turns into your dreams, and then it turned into his personal agenda of I can't travel outside the country, so I'm going to make up all this stuff about the security that Elvis can't travel outside the country. And then there's all the gambling debts, and I have obligations to keep him here at the hotel and all that stuff. I thought that was really. But again, all this was revealed in the third act. I thought it was kind of cool. It's kind of like Knives Out. Remember Knives Out? The first half of the movie, you didn't realize what the real plot was until the second half of the movie, and it was really. You know
what I find interesting. I find this really interesting too, and that is that when I was watching the movie and they were doing that whole thing where he was setting him up to go and do the residency at this new hotel versus going and doing stuff in Europe.
Yeah,
I was thinking to myself, I was like, that's a way better gig. Like going to, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, you don't have to travel. You can stay in Vegas. You just go and do the shows every night. Like, that's why a lot of these older bands go to Vegas, so they don't have to do the travel. They can take their family there. They can hang out. They just go every night. They do a show. They go home. And I was like, other than the fact that the Colonel had this backdoor deal where he was going to be, getting a limited credit at the thing, I was like, This does sound like a better deal than traveling overseas and doing stadiums and doing all those things where it's like a crazy. I mean, from what I've heard from people I know who are in the concert industry and do big stadium stuff, it's a bear to do all that. I mean, it's so, the expenses are so much. It's not like they're making that much more money than they would, in an arena or somewhere like Vegas,
But I like that the theme that they put in there, a personal theme for his arc was, and it started with the conversation on the Ferris wheel at the beginning, was how he was talking about he wanted to fly. And he said, "Are you ready to fly?" Yes. And then that transferred or translated later on into the plane and how he wanted to travel or go off into he said, "I'd never been outside the country except for into the military." And I wanted to ask you, Eric, did the movie portray that correctly? Did he never really got to travel outside of America?
No, he never performed anywhere outside of the United States. And so, and you think about how big he is and even how popular he was everywhere, that he's limited. And so I think the 70s, like the hotel in the late 60s, starting 69 through the early 70s, I don't think it started out as a bad thing. I think it was really cool. I think he could express himself as an artist, a big stage. It was great. And if you want to watch,
he had all control. He's like, I have a new sound. He says, great, you can do whatever you want. But we're going
to. And if you have time to kill and you want to go watch some of those performances, they're a lot of them are on YouTube from those early Vegas shows. They have a lot from. It was actually a documentary called "That's the Way It Is." That was released, and there's fascinating clips you can watch live of those Vegas shows. Very entertaining. He was in his element, but then he just stayed there, right? Didn't progress, didn't go anywhere. Yeah. And I think that's probably the tragedy in the whole thing is there could have been more, but it just stayed there.
Right.
I also thought it was really cool to see. I mean, I'm assuming it was actual footage. It looked like it was of his last performance, last song of his last performance before he died.
Don't get ahead of the story. But I didn't know for sure too. I thought
really?
Yeah, we're going through the story. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, regardless, I just think
it was cool.
Spoiler alert: Elvis is dead.
Eric? Were there any other scenes that showed actual footage, or was that the time was at the very end?
That was the only time that I remember was at the end.
I didn't think.
And they started with Austin, right, and playing that, and then it went to some other clips, and then came back to Elvis. Yeah. And he looked so much like Elvis. Like,
I mean, I couldn't tell for a second.
Job. Yeah. If you're an Elvis fan, you've seen that Unchained Melody performed, and it's kind of a bittersweet thing. Beautiful song. He does a great job on the vocals, but he looks awful, right? Yeah.
And I like the description the guy says of that. He was like, you barely stand up and everything of that last performance.
Yeah, and when they transitioned that at the end, I mean, that was
emotional.
Not that I get real emotional about Elvis like some people do. Like it's just Elvis. So, but that was like an emotional moment, right? When they did that, you're kind of like, whoa, that's.
I don't care about Elvis, and I got emotional from it. Yeah. I didn't cry.
Tim, you got emotional during a movie?
Surprise! It happened once. Yeah.
Was Alf in there somewhere that I didn't see?
I want to talk about the scene where Senator Kennedy got shot, because I thought that was in his comeback. He had that bounce back concert. When I watched some footage, was that the one where he was in the black and the leather jacket? I don't remember.
Yeah. He was filming the Christmas special, right?
Yeah, it was supposed to be a Christmas special.
Yeah,
and then it turned into a comeback, and so he's wearing the black leather suit. And then he sings a song, If I Can Dream, where he's wearing a white suit. And you can see like the Elvis letters big and
but that was
behind him. But that's the same event.
Yeah.
Same event.
So I want to talk through that scene because he's in the black suit. There's this shot, and then they're watching the news, and I thought it was JFK. They're saying Senator Kennedy. I'm like, why do they call him Senator Kennedy? I'm like, I don't know my American history very well. But that was like a big deal. And he wanted to say something. They said, you, Elvis, need to say something to the nation. And the colonel was like, no, he can't. That's not his thing. Then they have a conversation later when he's sitting there contemplating that he has real life. He's an influence, and he has a platform, and he's like, I can do some good with this platform. He's not saying this, but that's what he's internalizing. And then the colonel goes and argues with me. He says, I sell merchandise. That's what I do. He says, well, I am Elvis Presley. That's what I do. And I thought that was an awesome line. And it didn't get him out to be able to express himself until that next concert where he's saying, if I can dream, right? That's what it's called.
Yeah.
And he says the line. I wrote it down, but when I Googled it, when I got home, it doesn't seem like he said it. You'll have to answer it. He says, a reverend once told me when things are too dangerous to say, sing. And that quote just keeps popping up from the trailer. Is that a quote, Eric? Do you know?
I'd never heard it before.
Okay, I think it was something from the movie, but it worked. It's a good line. Line. So then it goes into the International Hotel, but he can't express himself. I love the scene up in the Hollywood sign where he's talking to the kid from Stranger Things, the Billy or whatever his name is. I like that. It looks so perfectly dated and all that stuff. And they were helping. He's like, I can't remember what he said. I don't think I wrote it down. I need you to help me find myself again or get back. Cause he said they sent me off to war. They gave me a haircut and I've not been myself. They tried to change me after that. He said, I need your help to get myself back. Were there years where there was like this transformation going on? And then all of a sudden he went back to when he came out. I don't know which concert was it when he came back. Cause they made an event.
It was the comeback special. When he was in the black leather suit. That's
that was the special. Okay, so I'm out of order. Okay.
So it's called the '68 comeback special. If you watch it, and it's called that because he came back. Right. That was coming out of the movies and him saying he's going to get back to doing what he loved, and that was music and performing in front of a live audience. Yeah.
Then they put him in the International Hotel, and I gotta say, the sequence where he says, here's what I want, and I need an orchestra, and I need this group and this group or whatever, and they have them all set up there. And then when he's just, it reminded me of the scene in the Chris Rock School of Rock with Jack Black, where when he's standing with bangs like, hey, you do this, dun 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 dun, and he goes, you do this, and then he puts it together, and then he starts ripping the song. And watching him go around with all that talent and say, you do this, and he's like really feeling it. And so that was really lame for me to do that, but you know what I mean? He was like getting really into it. And it's
right on par with what you generally do.
Yeah. It was just like Jack Black, how he is like, yeah, yes. You know, he was so excited. He was back. He was feeling the energy, and he felt connected to what he was creating there. And you watched him put together this song, and then it transitioned into the concert. And then you watched him. What I loved about this, and you've seen a lot more performances there, because I just came home I just watched the movie. That's all I got this from. But he was basically conducting that group behind him, multiple groups, conducting it like it was an orchestra, but while he's facing the other way performing. Like he was just like cueing them and everything. And it was incredible to watch it. I thought that was one of the best sequences of the movie, was that performance. With I have the picture here, this one right here. I thought that one, that was just and I watched a clip when I got home, the hand motions and everything. It was like spot on. It was amazing how well they did that. But I just loved it. The cueing everything, and then singing whatever that song was, It's All Right or whatever it was. And then he just kept bouncing to the girls, you know. Oh,
yep.
So awesome.
If you go back and watch Elvis, that's the way it is. You'll see a lot of those performances, and they are just that way. It shows him rehearsing for that, where he's talking through some of that stuff, and then you see him on stage, and he is just in his element. He does a fantastic job.
Yeah. Was this exaggerated, or was it like that? Was he just that good? He had complete command of that stage. It was so cool.
He definitely knew what he wanted. It didn't show like you won't see like in the movie, he's like, you know, sound like, you know, he's pointing and saying like, you know, you do horn sounds or whatever, right? I want that. And I didn't see it that exact, but like he's in there talking to him about like when the background vocals are going to come in and how it's going to sound. He definitely had it in his head how he wanted that to be.
Yeah. That's so cool. It was so cool. I love that scene. I thought that was one of my favorite scenes. And then it went to him going out and kissing the girls on the lips and everything. And then Priscilla sitting there watching him. And I was like, oh, here we go. This is where we're finally getting some drama in this story. It's not just about him. And then narrating, the colonel said, what did he say? Oh, that's when he said the line that and I thought it was interesting that he was not Elvis, that the colonel was seeing her and he knew exactly what was going on. And I thought he was going to like manipulate that later, but he didn't. But he said, I always knew that she would never be able to compete, or she would always feel that she couldn't compete with your love. And I thought that was a great line too.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a big theme for her character. What did you think about the Priscilla relationship? What are your thoughts about that, Eric? Because you probably know more of the history, obviously. I thought it was kind of weak and they didn't show much. So what did you feel?
They could have shown more, because if you read, definitely what she says, and we're left kind of with her side of the story. He's not around to say, but they hit it off early on, even throughout their marriage, even with all the infidelity and everything. She loved him, right, and he loved her.
I gotta say, early on where she was asking about Natalie Wood. Yeah. I love that because I've always been in love with Natalie Wood. But yeah,
exactly.
Was that or no? Was that like a rumored relationship or something, or was that just a fun line? Really?
No, it was
funny.
And so I think that we're definitely got one side of the story. But I mean, she even says, and you see the pictures of them coming away from getting divorced, holding hands, and they talk about how they held hands during court, and they stayed close throughout the rest of the time he was alive until he died. But you look at that relationship there. It was very minor in the movie. It wasn't
the scene where she walked out? The scene where she walked out was really emotional. I didn't really care for the scene where he was crying when his mom died. He was hiding in the closet. I was like, this isn't a great crying scene. He's a great actor, but I didn't buy that scene. But when she was ready to walk out, and he was accepting it, but he was still saying the words to plead for her to stay. And then she goes over and hugs him, and she's like stroking his hair and stuff. And he's just like asking her. And then she walks up and he just has to see her go. And then you contrast that with their final scene together in the car. Bro, this is where I started getting like hit hard, where she said, or he's sitting there reflecting on his life and his career, what he has. And he says, I'm almost 40 and I don't have it. He's like, no one will remember me. That's what he says. No one will remember me. And he says, I've not done anything that's lasting. I haven't made anything that's lasting, which just shows these great artists that are legends that are going to be eternal, in this life. That sounded weird, but you know what I mean? I mean, their legacy is eternal, right? That they're going to be remembered, that Eric is going to go to Graceland and for his birthday for 3 days and waste a lot of money on t-shirts and hats. But like he said, I haven't made anything lasting. And then she says, or she's like trying to encourage him to go heal himself so he can move on. And then he says, I'm out of dreams. I don't have any more dreams. I thought that was devastating. And for someone that lived such a great, had such a great life and career in such a short time, to say that, I was like, man, I mean, it's only a 20-year career, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, man.
Well, what's interesting about that? I was actually recently just watching a thing about successful people. It was like a TED Talk or something. Some guy was saying, and he said something that I think that hit on. And he said there were 3 traits that highly successful people, I mean, he was talking about businessmen, like billionaires and stuff, right? But I think it would apply to him too. I don't remember the third one. I should go back and listen to it. But the first 2 were really telling. He said they think, he's like, they have simultaneously a superiority complex where they know that they can do big things and they think they can do them better than everybody else. And he said, and the second thing is they have an inferiority complex where they never feel like they're enough, right? So like, then I go, wow, because it was like, I'm feeling attacked. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, I'm feeling attacked right now. But like, that sounds like what he's saying. Like when he's saying, I mean, think about how crazy that sounds. He's Elvis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
right.
And he's sitting there and he said, I haven't created anything that is going to be lasting. And you're like, you're sitting here and you're thinking about, you're like, are you kidding me? Here we are now, 2022, and a movie just came out and we've spent an hour talking about Elvis.
Yeah.
What do you mean you haven't had anything lasting? I mean, and so,
and that's the thing about great artists. They don't see their work as like it's just like how big actors can't watch their own movies. They're like, this is garbage. I can't watch it.
But that's what I'm saying is that sometimes, because I just know, look, I'm not Elvis. I'm not a superstar or anything like that. But I've obtained a certain amount of success in my life. And it is driven a lot sometimes about, it has been driven in a way to some degree of not feeling like I've ever done enough. And so it drives you to do so much more. So, I mean, I bet there's an element to Elvis working so hard and doing all of these shows and doing all of these things because he probably, for whatever reason, never felt like he had done enough,
Yeah.
maybe to deserve what he had or to deserve the admiration. And so he felt like, or maybe he even felt like if he stopped doing it, that would go away. You know what I mean? And so,
and it was never enough because, you know, with his mom and that fight they had earlier, and I love watching that house because the house they had the little go-kart that would drove around the yard, and it slowly over the years just got a little more nicer, a little more busier. But his mom said, "You're not happy with all this stuff. I got you all this, but you're not happy." And he says, "I am happy," but he's like yelling at her, so he clearly is not. When he has that almost that same conversation at the end with Priscilla before she walks out, he said, what did he say? He says, "I got you all of this," or whatever. And she says, he said, "I got you all you ever wanted," or whatever. She says, "All I wanted was a husband." You know, we have a lot of those same family values with what you're saying, Josh. You know, people with that great level of success and this crazy amount of wealth and fame that Elvis and others had, just having a broken, unsettling, or unhealthy, I guess, home life or a domestic relationship with their wife or whatever. The romance, she was talking about how you don't have sex with me. He's having all these girls sneaking in the door. He's on the drugs. She's throwing the pills at him and everything. All this stuff that he has, all this fortune and success doesn't mean anything because that wasn't enough for her. So when he's sitting there in the car in the next scene, he's like, I don't have anything that's lasting. He's talking to his wife who's already left him. This was a year. No, this wasn't the year later part. I don't think. Yeah, it was. This was like the year later part. And then, but she still loved him. There was still that relationship. And I do like that. I appreciate you sharing that, Eric, because you could see that they still had a relationship together. And speaking as a divorced man, I can appreciate that because my ex and I have, we don't want to walk around holding hands or anything, but like we do have a respect and and there's still a relationship there as co-parents and everything. And that's what you saw in that airport scene. I really loved it. And he gets in there.
Maybe this is trauma talking. I don't know, but like when she sits there and says like all I wanted is a husband, I'm like, yeah, right. I don't. Look at all this crap you've got.
It's the same thing in The Greatest Showman. It was the same. I mean, that, I don't know how real that conversation was, but
as you're driving away in your limo, you're like, oh, all I wanted was a husband.
You're such a jerk.
You look at all those zeros. You look at all those zeros in the bank that you're about to take, and you tell me that all you wanted was a husband.
Stop it. I liked it, Eric. Tell me a little bit about the dad, though. Was that? It seemed like I couldn't even tell that was the dad there the whole time. It just they kind of kept it afloat, but like nothing happened with that relationship. Was there more there that would have been better for you?
I don't think so. I mean, his dad was always around. I mean, he was a lot closer to his mom than he ever was his dad. And
I felt that from this.
Yeah, and if you read about his life, I mean, that's kind of the way it was. His dad kind of felt like a pushover in the movie. That they gave him a title to kind of almost get him out of the way, right? And
is that what that was? I thought it was just to kind of be Donald Trump giving all of his family member big jobs. I thought it was just kind of give him something to do and an income. It was just to get him out of the way.
I felt like it was just to kind of get him out of the way, kind of appease him, appease the parents, so that he could have more control. Colonel.
Yeah, it struck me as though it was the colonel trying to look like the nice guy, but being like, "Look, your dad's the manager. He's the one who's going to be managing everything." So that they never looked at the colonel as the guy who was running things.
And then it was the dad that pointed at the letter he's like, "We're broke," and he's like, "You're the money guy. You're supposed to be taking care of the money." And he says, "I don't know what to tell you. We're broke." And then he talked about how they're being sued by the colonel. So that's where it flipped.
Right.
I like that. I like the drunken scene too, when he goes on stage after finding out the rumor that he was a fraud and everything, and he wasn't a real colonel and all that. And that was the other thing. He eventually started calling him Admiral. I didn't know if he was being sarcastic or if that was just a fun thing between them, but
That was real that he would call him that as a nickname. Yeah.
Huh.
The scene though where he called him out on stage did not really happen.
Really?
So,
Okay. It was really good. It was very dramatic, and you're trying to tighten up a movie, so I'm not gonna be upset about that. But it was good. He called up the lights, and then they cut to his last sequence, his death. I'm glad they didn't show him like on the toilet and everything. That would have been not unsettling, but it would have just been
just for the record that he wasn't really on the toilet, but he was in the bathroom.
Well, maybe he started and fell. I don't know. But I like, on that sequence, I thought this was when he's going to die. Before the 1 year cut, he's up there saying, he said, tell the colonel, I just want things back to the way they were. And then he's like walking around and it's a really dark room. And he's closing with the controller. He's controlling the window shades or drawing or closing around him. And the whole room is just blacking out. And at the very end, before he sits on the couch and then barely any light, he says, tell the colonel to send up the doctor. And I thought that was going to be his death right there. And I thought they were going to do it a little differently to not put him in the toilet. But then they cut to a year later and then all that happened. And I thought that was way better. But that setting the tone. And finally I was like, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. And now I know I'm going to get there soon because it was so well set up. I was like, okay, we're unwinding or we're wrapping up the story now. But it was good. And then we had the Priscilla scene and then the final concert. I loved that. I really loved how they did that. The scenes where he died, the lights and the stars or whatever, or the lights in the audience, the flashes from everyone's cameras, it dimmed or blacked out. You couldn't see anyone except for the camera flashes or whatever. And then they all slowly darkened except for the very last one because that was his light going out, and it had the plane in one of those dissolves had showing the plane flying into the sky. There's all these themes all wrapping up together and conversations he had and the dance numbers he had. I love that. And you were seeing him connecting with the music in those other sequences with the flashbacks. But everything that happened, the whole story, wasn't just this boring telling a story. Like, not that Forrest Gump is boring, but like there's things that it's just like, here's this really long life story. This showed his life story, but all those things connected at the very end very effectively. And it made the punch at the end where he died, emotional for me because I didn't care. And we all knew he was going to die, but it made it emotional. So I think that side of it was really good. Anything else that you guys want to praise before we give it a rating?
No, I think overall I was impressed with the movie. I don't think it was as good as Bohemian Rhapsody, but I think it was good.
I still need to see that, and I wanted to, but this was more interesting to me than that. I got to say this outfit, oof. That freaking coat and that black, the high collared, it was so awesome. That was like my favorite shot. And he had a bunch of close-ups.
Oh boy, now we know what Tim's wearing to Fan X or whatever.
Like Elvis cosplay.
Yeah.
Oh man,
you should see the Elvis picture with him wearing that. It's
I think I saw it.
Elvis looks even cooler. Just so you know.
Okay. All right, this is maybe my new man crush. No, he's not my man crush, but this Elvis is. Let's look at that. Woo! He's a hottie. Look at that hair. That was so cool. That's what I was going to point out too. Like, it wasn't just the wardrobe and everything, but like his the hair, the cinematography, the wardrobe, and this was a super. I can remember the number. It was like $100 or $200 million or whatever. It was like a huge number for a biopic like this, and that's what they talked about. That's what a lot of the budget was the set pieces and the wardrobe and everything, because all of the fans and everything, they were in period clothing, and I didn't realize how many different sets and places we were going to go to in this story, but they went all over, and all the concerts and all the different eras over those 2 decades. Well, 3 if you have his childhood, and they really did. I felt like this was filmed back then. It was really well done, a very vintage feel to it. But I really appreciate that, and the wardrobe and the costume and everything, until he got to the sequence jumpsuits. They didn't overdo it, and that's fine, because I that's what I'm like, ugh, I just couldn't stand looking at him. And I'm glad they didn't put him in a fat suit. You mentioned that. I think, Josh, you did, I think. Or one of you did, but I was like, I don't want to see. I like how they made him still look like him, and then transition. I could believe this guy, because they did so good, looking like the footage of his last concert that they did at the end. I didn't need to watch this guy in a fat suit to watch that transformation. I didn't need that. I thought that was really good, but Love it. Okay, let's go. I do want to go through the categories and do a Tim Wilde rating on it. So I'm gonna ask you guys the story and plot, 1 out of 2 point, or half a point, 1 point, 1.5, or 2 points. The story and the plot. What do you think, Eric?
I give it a 1.5.
1.5. Fair. Josh?
I would agree. I would have liked the other aspects of it being a part of the story.
Me too. That's where I said I thought some things were rushed, some things could have slowed down, and even though the pacing of the movie was fine, but the focus was in the wrong places in some parts. I think I agree with that. Okay, character. This is acting and character arcs, and the What do you think, Josh?
I'd give it a 2.
A 2? Okay.
Yeah.
All characters, not just him.
Yeah, I think that the main ones are him and the Colonel, right? So
yeah. Eric, you think too?
Yeah, I would agree too.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think 1.5.
Why?
Not because of that. Nothing wrong with them.
I thought you'd be like half a point.
No. The performances were all very good, but this is also character arcs, and I don't think there was enough relationship or character arcs with Priscilla. And I think there were things missing in the things were wasted time, I guess, on his dad. That didn't seem to go anywhere. And and maybe they could have fleshed out more of the stuff with him and the Colonel. I think, well, that was fine, but I think mostly him and Priscilla, because that was a big element of the emotion at the end, where I didn't think there was enough setup for that. That's the only reason I am personally dropping a point. Cinematography, I was 2 out of 2. There was no complaints. It was gorgeous settings, gorgeous lighting. The set pieces were amazing. It was so well shot. There's plenty of close-ups, plenty of big full stage sequences and everything. I thought it was like just a home run with the cinematography. What do you guys think?
I'd agree.
I would agree as well.
All right. Special effects. Now, a movie like this doesn't have a lot of special effects, but here's what I liked was how they did the little banners when they went from scene to scene, like city to city or whatever, in different parts of his career. It was kind of like the Cobra Kai title, like how they would do that in each episode. Like Cobra Kai would just pop up out of somewhere in the background or whatever. I thought that was a lot of fun. And the jumpy animation, like Moulin Rouge, like I talked about earlier, and the cuts, the dissolves, all that kind of stuff all blends in there. I think it really worked for the vintage vibe that they were going with this one. Cause you don't need, it's not like there's, gunfire and explosions and stuff, but it was awesome. And Josh, you may have to correct me on this. Those big shots of the International Hotel shooting around Vegas, wouldn't they have had to CGI'd out a bunch of some of the buildings that didn't exist back then?
Yeah, I'm sure they would have had to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even a portion of that hotel. If you go to that hotel now, there's a larger wing on the one side of that building.
Really?
What was there then? And they had that awesome in the movie.
Seamless. There you go. Special effects at 2. Okay, this is a big one for this movie: music and score.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I'd give it a 2. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay, did it please you? You've watched a lot of Elvis performances, Eric. Did this hold up? Not the acting, but I mean the music. Was it well done? Were you satisfied as an Elvis lover?
Yes, I was. If you go through that movie, I mean, there's just some interesting music throughout it, and with the different influences he had throughout his life that they put in there as well. So like you hear songs playing in the background. They even spliced together some of his songs with other things. So I don't know how many people picked up on that if you weren't familiar with a lot of his work, but it was fantastic. It was great.
So I was also impressed that they made this song, or they made the music like just like you feel like you hit everything that you needed to, the big hits of his, but you didn't stop and like have like an entire song of, I don't know what songs, I don't have examples, but you know what I mean? They didn't stop and do like Burnin' Love or whatever. They didn't have to play like a whole little mini music video throughout the movie, because that really does drag down the pacing of a movie like this, where they're like, we have to do a feature of a montage of each song every time something happens and transitions of what he was singing during that era. They didn't do that. They just cut together different parts of different concerts, and it works really, really well. And I'm going to say this right now, as someone that does not like Elvis music, and as someone that would never buy this album, just you can appreciate this, Eric, just like the Superman the movie soundtrack, the score by John Williams, it's a perfect score for that movie. It is awful recreational listening. I would never, other than the theme song, I would never listen to that music. And I have the CDs right there. But this movie, the music and the songs are perfect for this movie. I was very entertained. I enjoyed all the concert pieces and all the solos and everything. But I would never buy this album for recreational listening for me. But I agree, 2 out of 2 for sure.
What did you think of Eminem when the credits came up?
Was that in the beginning or the first part of the credits?
At the
very end. I didn't stay that long. I had to get out of here.
There was the very first song in the credits. It started with Eminem, and it had a Jailhouse Rock beat in the background.
Oh, I don't know. I have to re-listen to that.
You were trying to leave too fast.
I was trying to get here set up for this. Yes, I was. But I wouldn't have anyway. Once they stop doing the pop-up credits and then it goes to the scrolling, that's about when I bail.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a movie I'm really into, because they usually have like big old animations or something going on for the first part of it, and then it cuts to the scrolling credits. I did watch that part. I wasn't paying attention. I thought they were just playing clips of his music, and I was like, yeah, I don't care, because it's not my thing. But again, that says a lot because of how much I don't like Elvis music. Still give it a 2 because it was really good, really well done.
That's interesting. So I think, you gave it a 9. That means, and we gave it a 9.5. That's a pretty impressive.
That's really good. So well done. So Josh, you think 9.5? Do you think Bohemian Rhapsody would have been a 10?
Yeah.
You dropped it by plot and story. So the plot and story and
because I think Bohemian Rhapsody hit on all the points that I would have expected it to hit, whereas this one, I understand they were doing it from the Colonel's perspective. I just wasn't really expecting that, nor I would have preferred it different. Like I said, I think that it was interesting. It was super interesting. I really enjoyed the movie, and I learned a lot that I didn't know. But there were some other aspects of it that I would have liked them to have hit more deeply on that they did not. And some of the things that they hit really deeply on, I felt like they could have pulled back a little bit. So that was it. I mean, really, like, I don't think it was like I'm not. It's not like I was like the plot was terrible. I just thought that there were some things that I just was expecting a couple of things and I didn't get it.
I think the perspective of the Colonel was very effective for this narrative, for the way they told this story, and that really hit. I'm going to say it again. The line at the end where he said, "What killed him? Some say his heart, some say the drugs, some say me, but what killed him was his love for you." And then those couple, the little statements at the end of before the credits roll, just kind of the update. Here's what happened, and then and I got emotional. I said that now he'll last forever. Just like we said, here we are, all these years later, talking about it, and there's this big movie after him.
After watching this movie, I am very much more inclined to watch an Elvis documentary.
I would too. Yeah. I would too. And a couple of concerts. And I would watch certain scenes from this movie because I really liked parts that were done. I just don't care enough to watch the whole thing. And not that I don't care about Elvis. It's a long movie, and it's hard for me to get back around to a 2.5 hour long movie anyway, unless it's Superman.
And if you want to watch a great documentary, they did one, HBO did one called Searcher, I believe it was called. It's a 2-part. Fascinating. Really good. Really well done.
Write that down. Okay, Searcher documentary. Okay, final question. This is different than the rating. Is this a must-see in the theater film? Is this a theater film? Wait till it's on Blu-ray, or just wait till it's streaming? Celestial, terrestrial, telestial. Josh, you first.
Well, it's a little late for this, I think, but I think it's a celestial movie. Yeah,
it's not too late. You can give it a 10 out of 10, but it's not something you need to see in the theater.
No, I'm just saying. I think it's too late for people. I think it's probably out at the theater by now.
I saw it today.
Okay.
Well, it was in a corner theater, but yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. No, I think it's one that's definitely. Okay, hold on. Is it a must-see in the theater? No, but I think
it's worth your money.
I think you should. It's worth it. It's definitely worth seeing in the theater. Yeah.
What do you think, Eric?
Well, I'm probably biased, but I definitely think you need to see it in the theater. I think the experience is a lot better, right?
Oh, and let me also preface, though, this is a movie I will be purchasing and keeping in my collection. Yeah.
I will too. Even though I'll never watch it, I'll buy it because I buy movies that I respect the filmography of it. I totally do. I have several movies I'll never watch again, but I own them because I think they deserve it. I agree. Celestial Film. Oh, that's not the right one. Whatever, it works. I think it's a good enough experience that you feel like you're watching a concert with great story between it and a lot of great cinematography and lighting, all that stuff. A lot of the detail that you see in the wardrobe and everything that they put so much work into. I think that huge budget deserves to be rewarded to see this in the theater. It could be more appreciated in the theater than at home. So I agree. This is a Celestial Film. If you don't have any interest in Elvis, like I didn't really, I was still entertained. So I think it's still even entertaining enough that it's still worth your ticket, the price of your ticket. So I agree. There you go. Celestial Film. Yeah, I'm glad I saw it, but most importantly, I'm glad Eric got to see it because I'm sure it was just a life.
It was really good.
Life dream come true.
Yeah. And once I saw the family, like Elvis's daughter and Elvis's ex-wife, both spoke highly of the movie. That made me even more excited about it. Yeah, they had a special screening even at Graceland. Tom Hanks was there, Austin was there, Priscilla was there, Lisa Marie was there, and they said that really captured who they knew for what it's worth. So
wow, that's really cool. That's a big insight, that because a lot of times documentaries the actual people involved don't have good thoughts about it. But yeah, that's a big deal. So anyway, Eric, any final thoughts, or is that good enough?
Hey, well, the only thing I want to tell you guys, trivia. Do you know where his last concert was? What city?
Vegas? I don't know. I would just guess Vegas.
Indianapolis, Indiana.
Are you serious?
No kidding.
Wow.
So apparently we weren't together close enough. We weren't, but there was a marker downtown Indianapolis where they had one of his scarves in the time capsule on the inside of it. And don't know if it's still there, but it was there 20 years ago.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's crazy. This one right here, the one they showed.
So that wasn't filmed, the one in Indianapolis. So the one they showed was the last place that they filmed his concert, which was like shortly before that.
So not this one.
No. But his actual last performance was in Indianapolis.
That's crazy. Just not televised.
Yep.
Recorded. Well, that's interesting. Well, thanks for that information. That touches home for us. A lot of good pop culture history in Indiana. A lot of great icons came out of there, so that's good to know. Look at that poor guy. He's about to roll over dead.
Yeah, it's rough, right?
Yeah, it really is. Hey, 1977, that's when Star Wars came out, just so you know. And then the next year is when Superman the movie came out. So there you go. That's my trivia for this. Josh, you got anything you want to share with trivia?
I think Rocky came out the year before. 76.
76?
I think it was 76. It might have been 78. I think it was 76. Hold on. Let me look it up.
Now we have to know. We have to give the answer. We can't just drop trivia and then tell them to come back next week.
Release.
I gotta say too, talking about music, I hate the song Unchained Melody. I hate it. I hate the scene in Ghost. I can't stand it. I have stories behind
November 21st, 1976. The
There you
greatest movie of all time was released.
Yeah. And that makes sense because that's why he was being considered to play Superman in Superman the movie. Glad they scrapped that.
I wouldn't want him obligated to play Superman, bring out less Rocky movies. Forget that.
Yeah, that's not my concern. I want a good quality Superman, and Rocky or Sylvester Stallone is not a good.
It's not there.
No. Would not do it. All right. Anyway, Eric, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate your professionalism. And last piece of trivia is this was not Eric's first recording on Saints on Cinema. Eric and I did recording like a year and a half ago on the Lois and Clark Superman movie, but as Josh knows, I have a real problem with editing sometimes, and I got our video edited with a lot of cool stuff in it, and it keeps getting hit by copyrights, and I gotta go through and trim all the pieces that get hit by copyright because I really want it to be done because I really loved our discussion. So Eric was there before, just unpublished, and Eric, I'm sure you'll be back because I still want to talk more Superman with you.
I love it.
Nothing else. Yeah. So anyway, Josh, thanks for
I would also like to, before you go, and say, Eric, I am grateful that you will be here to talk about Superman with Tim.
So you don't have to? Is that what
Give me the night off. Yeah.
100%. That's what he's saying. Yep. Anyway, well, thanks for watching. Thanks for putting up with my hair, and thanks for enjoying Elvis. And if you have any thoughts, things you liked, put it in the comments below. If you disagree with us, put it in the comments below. And if you think Josh is kind of a jerk, put that in the comments below. And we'll catch you next time on Saints on Cinema. Thanks again, Eric. We'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Oh, cramp. Oh.
It says we're still live.
Yeah, well. Oh, probably. Wow, this is not going to be cut out, but I just got a crazy Charlie horse. Anyway, all right, later. Why does it say that? Boom.